Welcome to the webinar series again. This is a part in a long group of series we'll be talking about later on. The agenda for today is an introduction to the library map of the world, the engagement scenario for library associations mainly, the library content of library map of the world content curation. How do we gather this data? What takes it? What are the priorities? The whole process will be described to you. And then, of course, using this content in advocacy, the resources and the use of the cases or the stories that are available on the platform. This is the way the agenda is going to go. And definitely we have several speakers with us. The speaker is Locher, Executive Director of the Swiss Library Association, BiblioSuisse, and he's the chairman of the IFLA Management of Library Association section, the MLAS, and he's a member of the IFLA governing board. Halo will be our first speaker. I'd just like to say welcome, Halo. Nice to see you again, and hope we can go on together. Please, this floor is yours.
Thank you, Randa. Hello, everybody, dear colleagues. MLAS, Management of Library Association section, is the organization of all national associations within IFLA, the world institution and the Federal Institution of Library Associations worldwide. We have a lot of members in this section because each national association is part of this section within IFLA. And we have a committee, standing committee with 20 members. Normally, we can meet us at our World Congress, the World Library and Information Congress, which you know this year cannot take part in, it was planned in Dublin. And normally on the World Congress, we have two meetings, open meetings within the standing committee, where are other interested people from associations or other colleagues invited to be part of our work. And because it was not possible to meet us in presence with other colleagues out of the standing committee, we had the idea to start this webinar series to have more contact with our members out of the standing committee. More than 100 section members, we try to find relations with them. Therefore, that is the first seminar we start today, and therefore be a little bit patient with us because it's a premiere. And I invite you also to give us feedback, what you think about this kind of contact, this kind of webinars, what we should try to do and what we should avoid. Our first topic today is what Randa mentioned, the library map of the world. It's an important tool within the IFLA, and it's also important, you will see it in the presentation, for all associations, because it's based on facts and figures, and that is the base on each work in kind of lobbying. Now I come to the end of my 2-hour speak, and with a big thank to Randa Shidiak and Loy Chun Chin and Kristine Paberza-Ramiresa and Stephen Wyber, which will part of this webinar. They made this webinar possible. A big thank, and perhaps you can try to applause them. And now I give back to Randa.
Thank you, Halo. Now the session moves on with our speaker, first speaker, Kristine Paberza-Ramiresa. She is a member of the engagement officer of IFLA. I'm sorry, I wanted to talk more about, I can't see my notes. Basically, Kristine has been with IFLA for quite a while, and she's been in charge of the library map of the world since its inauguration in IFLA. So she has the widest experience possible, and Kristine will be taking us step by step into the actual curation and workings of the library management of the world, library map of the world. So Kristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Randa. Before I start, I'll try to arrange showing my slides. Let me see. You must see the another slide now. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to be here and talk about the library map today. But before I start, I want to answer the question, which is in the question and answer box. And the question was if there are any translation or subtitles. Yes, there are. And for that, you should click on the live button on the left upper corner of the screen and choose the live streaming. That will open a separate web page with a transcript of what we talk about in a selected language. I hope it works, and if it doesn't, please contact us in the chat, and other colleagues will help you to solve that. So the library map of the world. As Randa mentioned, I will talk a little bit about engagement, a little bit about what are the priorities for this exciting year in front of us. Yeah, but slides are not working. Slides are working. So the library map of the world. So what do we have today? We have a lot actually. When we started with the great vision and the plan to create this resource back in 2017, we actually started from zero. And what we achieved during those past 4 years has been, first of all, a lot of engagement. Is because IFLA is not alone creating this resource. We are creating it all together, but also in terms of content, it is a lot. We have more than 130 countries already online with some data. Some countries has less data, some countries had more, but we are very happy that we are getting closer to someday be able to tell how many libraries there are in the world. We have doubled the number of SDG stories over the past year, and I will talk about a little bit more about SDG stories in the second part of my presentation. And we have 22 country profiles. These are the more comprehensive information about the library field in each of those 20 countries, and it's an opportunity to be there, and we'll talk a little bit about what it takes to prepare and how you can actually use it already, what we have, and what are the opportunities when you are there on the library map. So we have been working for 4 years, but honestly, the awareness about the map is not perfect. And there are still many people who open the website for the first time and are wondering what is it all about and what you can find there and what you can do about all that content. That's why I will start about where you can find this data, the stories and the country profiles. So when you log into the library map, on the home page is where all the data is. So these are the 8 basic metrics which you will see on top of the page, and we have data across all different library types. Just one thing that I want to mention here is that many people might not have noticed, but you can download the full data set in the CSV format from that page, from the first page. And it will come together with all the definitions for each of the library types and each of the metrics. So I encourage you to go online and try it yourself. The country profiles are in the page which is labeled countries. So this is, as I said, more than 20 at the moment, but it has an overview on the first page, more descriptive information about the library system itself, and it has a separate sections for finding out information about organizations in the library field, with short descriptions and links to their websites, about the policies and legislations, about events and publications, and So if you haven't done it yet, go online and open one country with the content and find out how it all looks like. Something that I want to mention here, that the country profile is actually another place where your data is highlighted. And it gives like a very nice one-page overview across all library types and across all metrics. But on top of that, it also has additional data, which is contextual indicators. And this is an added value of the country profile, because this is not something that contributors need to prepare. We take care of importing this data from the World Bank data sets and other data sources. But when going to the country profile, it gives a little bit more of that developmental context, let's put it that way. And stories are in a separate page on the library map, which is called SDG Stories. And as I said, during the past year, we have doubled the number. So if at the beginning it was coming very slowly, then now we are able to put more stories online faster. And in the second part of my presentation, I will talk a little bit more about what has changed and why we are able now to put these stories online faster. At the moment, we have 42 stories, and there are one story can be relevant to multiple SDGs. And that's why you will see we have SDGs where we have more stories and some where we have very little stories. But we are happy to have all SDGs covered. And that just proves to what IFLA has been advocating for a long time, that libraries matter across all the SDGs. So one last, not last, because there is also about page. I will not talk that much today, but I want to mention that there is a page which is called contributors. And this is the place where the website users can find who is the contributor of the data or of country profile or SDG story. And contact that organization for more information if they want to find out more, and also showing where the actual data comes from is because the library map team is working together with those contributors, and these are color coded, will be listed if you select your country, and you'll be able to see who contributed a story or who is the data contributor. And now let's talk a little bit more about contributors, because here is what we are very proud of, is that actually the library associations are our main partners in creating this website and this very important resource. And at this time, we are working together with more than 200 different organizations, and about half of them, or a little bit more, are the library associations. The rest are the national libraries or other types of libraries like university libraries, or even other institutions like, for example, library schools or some consortiums, or specific organizations who are responsible for library statistics in each of the country. But why it is important for us to have national library associations as a partners, because one of the goals of the library map of the world as such is also advocate for the collection of country level national library statistics. And by being engaged as a contributor in this project, we are also very happy to see that the associations are involved in all those processes. And over those 4 years, we have seen examples of how just being on the map and being engaged in this project has helped to improve the collection of the national statistics in countries. So thank you very much to everyone, every single person who is engaged. And something else that I want to mention also, that currently that we are working with people from 170 countries approximately. And this is a little bit more than you can find on the website. because on the website you'll find those 134 countries. What happened is that we have the rest of more than 30 countries. We are working with contributors who are still in process of preparing their country profile or trying to collect and gather some country level library statistics. They're engaged in the library map, and it helps them to move things forward in their countries. And one day we will be able to add them on the map as well. So what does it mean for the Library Association to be a contributor or to be a contributor of the library map of the world as such? First thing that I want to mention, it is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing relationship. By becoming a contributor, the association becomes our main contact point in the country when it comes to submission of content and curation of content. And the Library Association as a contributor, in this case, I'm talking more about contributing data or contributing a country profile information, because when it comes to SDG stories, every single library can be a contributor, even a smallest community library. Okay, but and then we would keep in touch over the year, and we'll try to engage in keeping that content online and up to date. So that also means that to represent the country level picture on the library map, that role of contributor also involves a lot of collaboration at the national level. Would it be a national library or other institutions dealing with libraries or having data in their possession? So that means that while preparing, would it be data or information for the country profile, it involves collaboration with other organizations in the country. And last but not least is that we are also very happy that many of our contributors take the role of raising awareness about the library map in general in their countries and within different library community groups. So that is the role of contributor, but something else that I want to mention today is the role of being a mediator. And this is a new role. We have a couple of examples in a couple of countries where organizations take up a role of being a mediator in the process of gathering and curating SDG stories for the library map. So, and that is mainly done to solve the language barrier, because curation of stories is faster if we do it in English. And that is the working language for the story curation. And then the association, if they want to take up that role, can organize the logistics within the countries that libraries submit stories to the association, and then association works with the library map of the world team to curate those stories and get them until the publication online. I will be talking a little bit more about the curation process, and might come a little bit clearer because there is a lot of work that needs to be done when the story is submitted. And you'll see that there is a potential for library associations helping their libraries who have great projects, but maybe the language barrier, for example, is a barrier to submit that story. And then the last, also in the same way as with other content. So there is a potential as a mediator to raise awareness about those stories and to also build capacity within the country in storytelling. And later on, I'll tell about some of the resources that are available that Library Map of the World team can provide if there is such a willingness to do something to raise awareness or to build a capacity around storytelling and use of data for advocacy and things like that. So that was the first part of my presentation, and in the second part, I want to focus a little bit more on the content curation. So I have been mentioning it for a couple of minutes already. So what does it mean, and what are some of the priorities for this year and in general? So as I said, to keep the content up to date and to get more content online, it is a shared responsibility. So the Library Map of the World team shares this responsibility with the contributors. And it means that those who are contributors already noticed that we are reaching out constantly on an ongoing basis. And it is because at least once a year, we want to hear from our contributors and get some update on data, first of all. So, and that update of data doesn't mean that we expect that there are newer statistics, but if there are, we expect that we also get that update. And in many countries, country level statistics across different library types are not collected on an annual basis. So what we expect is also that our contributors tell us that this year we don't have newer statistics, and that what we have on the library map, that is still up to date. And the past year has been a challenge for everybody, and not so many contributors were actually able to update, and we understand that. But in future, we want to keep this as an ongoing activity, and at least once a year to check all the content. When it comes to country profile and the stories, it also is not a one-time event. One-time event when you publish it and then it's done and you forget. What we expect is that as a contributor, you keep an eye on your content and ask us to update or edit or correct something whenever it is needed, because the library field is also a developing organism, let's put it that way. And you can contact, as a contributor, you can contact us at any time when you see the change is needed in either your country profile or data or stories, and we will follow up and update it on the website. And also you can be sure that if you don't contact us as a contributor, that once a year we will reach out and we'll look for that update. So that is the first thing that I just wanted to mention here. And now let's talk a little bit about the country profile. Country profiles, as you saw, are 22, but there are about the same number of content in curation. So, and it is a lot of work to create that content and prepare that for the website. And it's not only work for the Library Map of the World team, but it also is a lot of work for the contributor. And for the association, especially in cases where people are volunteering their time, someone who is considering having a full profile must know that it is quite a lot of work. And let me just go through the items and tell you a little bit more what it takes. So first of all, on the first page of the country profile, there is an overview of the library field, let's call it that way, or the library environment. And it is a narrative text at about 500 words long. And it might seem like a lot, but it is the main problem here is to actually be concise and try to include the most important things inside. It is a place also on the library map where you can extend into describing your library system, because you saw that on the data side, we have the 6 main library types, and these are aggregated up to certain level. But here you can be more detailed and tell about priorities for each of the library types in the country, priorities of your association, your advocacy goals. It is a place where to really highlight what is important in your country and what are the issues where you also want to attract policymakers' attention. It's a place where you can talk about what is important for you. So the next thing we have on country profile are the library location resources. And we keep receiving also many questions from the field about how I can put my individual library on the map. So library map of the world is not putting single library locations on the map, but on the country profile, there is a place where we are linking to existing maps, and many countries are creating either geolocation maps by using Google Maps or OpenStreetMaps or other customized solutions. But in this place, we also can link to other resources which have just a listing of libraries with addresses and their websites or phone numbers, so that it's a place where people can reach out then to individual libraries. The organizations. The part on organizations is organized in 4 different types. This is a place to list national associations, national libraries, the ministries responsible or departments responsible for policies or the library field in your country, as well as other what we call library support organizations, which might be some consortiums or organizations giving grants on an ongoing basis to the library field. Basically, everyone that is involved in libraries. And what it has is a listing of those organizations with a short, about 100 words long description and the link to the organization's website. So a useful resource for everybody who wants to find and reach out to a specific country. So then the next is policy and legislation. It is a place where we want to have information about any national level policy documents like strategies and plans and things like that for the library development, as well as library laws. It's a place to put information about the legal deposit law and the copyright law, including exceptions for libraries. And here it is again a short description and a link to full text if that exists in any language. It doesn't have to be in English. And last but not least is a section on education and events. And this has 2 parts. One is a short description of any professional qualification requirements in the country, and then the possibility to acquire library qualification. Would it be a university or any other level? And at the end, there is a place to include information about any publications to the link, with links to full texts, as well as library related events which are taking place on an ongoing basis. Would it be conferences that are repeating every other year, or the library day or a library week. So, and all in total, it is a lot of work, as you see. Someone really needs to work on it. And what is important also that we expect that this is representing a national level picture. And if the Library Association takes up the role, and many does, to create and prepare this content, it really involves to working with other organizations, making sure that they are okay, listed there, and compiling all these this information together. Something also to mention is that what we heard from the field is that there are cases where, for example, associations involve library school students and giving them like a semester project to create all of this. And it is an exciting opportunity both for students, but also some resource saving option for the National Library Association. So, and when it all comes to the library map of the world, and here again we have a separate submission form, which is organized to facilitate the easy way of processing this content. Then when we get it, we again work together and to prepare it for publishing. So that is about the country profile, and we expect that we'll have more and more of those, and we'll be happy working together with the associations. So let's move to stories. And here on the screen, what you see now are the priority SDGs. And what does it mean is that at the United Nations high-level political forum, every year is decided what will be a selection of SDGs to focus on during the voluntary national reviews. And this year we have many. Well, number 17 is always included every year, but this year we have SDG number 16, we have SDG 8 and 10, employment and reduced inequalities. I just want to let you know that within the library map of the world, we are interested to get more stories for these SDGs. So if you have a program which is related to one or multiple of those SDGs, we would then prioritize the curation of these stories to get them online faster. And I want to also mention that for some of those, we have more stories, for some we have less, but SDG number 16 is one where we would be interested to get more. We have currently, I think, some 6 stories for that one. But yeah, looking forward to work around these priorities. One important thing to mention about the submission of stories is that we noticed that not everybody noticed that last year we changed an approach for submission of stories. And the important information to know is that for a while now, you don't have to write a story yourself, but to submit information for the story. And then the Library Map of the World team is drafting the narrative for you. And this is the reason that helped us to actually move faster with getting more stories online faster. One thing didn't change, and it is mentioned also in storytelling flowchart and explained in detail in storytelling manual, is that we still have a requirement and we want to have described not only about the program or project in the library, but also why it has been done. What was the problem? Because that is important, because that's the place through which we relate and make a connection to those relevant SDGs. And last but not least is to describe impact. And here I want to mention also that that we also provide support for that a little bit more later. So what happens during the curation of stories and why it takes so long time is, so it is basically step-by-step process. There is a lot to clarify. So first, when we receive a story, we would identify the relevant SDGs. And we would then draft the narrative based on what we choose as a focus SDGs. Because about the same project, you can tell a story in multiple ways, but it all depends on really what are the relevant SDGs. So when the narrative is done or in parallel, we would then work on pictures and videos. And here is important thing to clarify are all the copyright licenses and to get metadata for each of the pictures and videos. Yeah, and get those pictures in first place. When that is done, then we release a story in English, and that's an optional step which follows is to have a translation. So there is an option to have one translation in one another language, and if you choose to have that, we would ask for a translation. And last step in the whole process is that now our communications team is creating short, what we call communications video, to tell on social networks and make people aware about your story. But also those videos are useful tools to use in advocacy. They are less than 1 minute long and are all now available on a separate YouTube channel on IFLA's account on YouTube. If you haven't checked it, go online and check it. It really is nice when you can, in a short period of time, learn a lot about different programs. And I want to finish my presentation today with just saying that every story is a learning experience, and it's not only for the Library Map of the World team, who is learning a lot about many different programs happening all over the world, but it's a learning experience also for a contributor. And I just want to mention that there is a support from the Library Map team. We provide individual coaching on impact evaluation and gathering the potential impact evidence for the story, because what happens in reality is that when we receive stories, the impact is usually one of the parts which is missing in those stories. But even if you don't have that, we work on every story, and we would recommend steps that can be still taken to gather some impact evidence and include that in the story. Among the resources, the storytelling manual has a chapter on how to tell your story. That is very useful information to read before you start working on your story, and the flowchart that I show, that is a shorter version of a storytelling manual, basically. And the last thing to mention is that the Library Map of the World team is also offering a storytelling workshop. These days we are having a virtual version of that. And if you'd be interested to work more with your librarians in your country, or have a group of librarians who want to have stories online, we will be happy to talk to you and see if we can offer something and do something together. So that was my presentation, and I hope that it answers some of the questions that people have about the Library Map of the World, or how to engage, or what happens during the curation. So we will be continuing to work in getting more content online, but already now we have a lot that can be used in advocacy in many different ways that the next speaker will tell you. I hand back to Randa at this place. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristine, for that very nice presentation, very clear presentation on the Library Map of the World. And I can tell you now that there are lots of questions coming your way in the question answer period. I would just like now to present our next speaker, and that is Stephen Wyber. Stephen is basically the manager of the policy and advocacy unit at IFLA. He leads and works on both advocate for libraries globally and to build the capacity of IFLA members to do the same on their own. His team works on issues from copyright and human rights to heritage and internet governance. He has worked for IFLA since 2016 and previously for the UK Foreign Ministry in Paris. And he's a graduate of the University of Wales in Aberystwyth. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Randa. And given how many questions have come in, I will try to keep this quick without talking too quickly, which may be a little bit of a challenge. So I will look for you, Randa, waving if I'm going too fast. So I'm going to run quite quickly through some of the work that we're doing and some of the work that you can do to use all of this effort, to use all of this energy and dedication, time that you've put into gathering data and stories and profiles for Library Map of the World to support your advocacy. I'm sure for some of you, a lot of this is obvious. It's stuff that you do already, but it's never bad to have a quick reminder. It's also an opportunity to share some ideas about the things that we've been doing with Library Map of the World data that you can do too, but also which underlines quite how important it is that we get as much as we can and that it's as accurate as we can. So I'm going to cover 4 scenarios where this sort of data, this information is useful. And the first focuses on the pure data side of things, because it's true, there is an incredible power in being able to show numbers. Numbers allow you to look a lot more credible, a lot more serious than if you're just saying some or and many or a number of. They're what makes you into a more credible partner if you're trying to work with the government, if you're trying to work with a development agency, another organization. If you can say clearly, well, we have libraries, this many libraries, we have this many staff, we have this many libraries offering internet access, immediately it becomes possible for partners to realize how valuable a partner libraries can be. And of course, also a lot of the data that you're collecting can be presented as a valid metric, something that governments themselves should be interested in achieving. An example here, which I really like, is the fact that Finland, in its report to the United Nations last year about how it was succeeding, what it was doing to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, used the number of people visiting libraries as an indicator of success, of showing how much the share of the population, the engagement of the population in lifelong learning. So first of all, as I said, data as just a brand of credibility, a way to make your arguments look more solid, but also Library Map of the World data as something that you can put forward as a desirable for governments, something that political parties should be grabbing onto and saying, well, we want to increase this and increase this. Secondly, I'm very much focused on SDG stories. There is a lot of, often you will see reports and there'll be lots of numbers in them and there'll be lots of very good analysis, but they will often include inset boxes, these little colored boxes to one side of the page with a photo, which take all of this abstract information, this theoretical information, and turn it into something human with a face and a name. And the sorts of material that you're providing for SDG stories is so powerful for this. It helps people move from thinking abstractly, thinking in very broad terms, and realizing that what libraries are doing is making a difference to people on the ground. It's a great way of convincing. And so you will know best your situations, how these stories can be applied. Is it a case of simply showing people within your own field what libraries can do? The videos that the Library Map of the World team are creating are fantastic for this. Is it something that you can put out on social media to get more people thinking, to get more people engaged? Do you use it as part of broader presentations? If you manage to get on TV or on the radio, can you show these videos to convince people, to show them what's actually happening? These are also important for voluntary national reviews, and I'm just going to share a link in the chat. There was one question earlier. Submitting these sorts of stories, the examples of what's going on, can be powerful, because when governments are reporting on what they're doing to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, or to be honest, any desirable policy goal, stories count, and these SDG stories can really make a difference there. Obviously, the ones we have on the website are great global examples, and if your country is already there, use them, but hopefully we can see more, that we can cover all of the world, so that every country's library association can show these stories as part of its advocacy. Third, and this is something that Kristine already hinted at already, the country profiles are important in terms of making things simple, having a single place, a gateway for people who don't know so much about libraries, who maybe they've only ever come across an academic library when they were at university 30 years ago, or they've only just seen story time because they have young children. It's a great way of moving away from there and allowing potential partners to see what the library field looks like as a whole, to get a single, I can only think of the German Augenblick, a single view of the library field. It's also, as Kristine mentioned, a really good high profile place to identify the issues that matter. Again, a place that you can point to show that it's public, that your issues are out there, and that it's important for governments, for decision makers to do something about them. Also, and this links to what Kristine was mentioning about contextual data, it opens up possibilities to do some really interesting analysis so that you can get an idea of how the library field in your country compares with that in other countries. And we started doing some of this. So just to give you an initial example, based on the number of public and community libraries and librarians, we can use those sorts of data, the data that's presented on country profiles, to get an idea of how different countries, how different continents compare. We can see, for example, that Eurasia, so Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, Central Asia, has very high numbers of libraries and librarians per 100,000 people. The numbers are a lot lower in MENA and Africa. You can see there's contrast. Asian libraries, there are lots of Asian libraries, but relatively few staff, whereas in North America, there are relatively few libraries, but they're relatively well staffed. We can do the same looking at the numbers of researchers that each library or academic or research library worker needs to service. And you can look across the world, and this allows for some interesting research that we'll show later on, but it allows you to show that, well, researchers in one country may not be as well served by libraries as others. These are useful arguments to use in your advocacy. Next, I wanted to go a little bit further, and this really comes back to, and this is just to show what you can do by downloading the data, taking up that opportunity that Kristine mentioned earlier about downloading that CSV file, because something really exciting that Library Map of the World has allowed us to start doing is looking at the macro level, comparing situations from one country to the next and comparing them with other indicators. And this is a great way of actually getting involved in broader discussions about those big SDGs, about education, about research, about inclusion, about equality, being able to have a discussion with the statisticians. So not just appealing to the left side of the brain with stories, but really trying to convince people to start conversations about libraries and really some really desirable outcomes in terms of the SDGs. And so very quickly, I'm just going to go through a couple of examples, things that we can show thanks to the data that you provide for Library Map of the World. Now, of course, these are correlations. This is not causality, but there are so many things that we can now look at where we can show that, for example, where you have more libraries offering internet access, there is less of a digital divide between those who are unemployed and those who are in work, because people who are unemployed arguably may need the internet more than others to look for work, to develop skills. We can show there's a correlation. Similarly, we can show that in countries where there are fewer researchers per academic or research library worker, so where each library worker has fewer people to service, can dedicate more time to each researcher, researchers publish more. We can look at data using OECD data that shows that in most countries, children who come from less well-educated backgrounds depend more on libraries than those who come from higher educated backgrounds. This is important. It underlines that libraries have this potential to be a driver of social mobility, of social change, to help people who may be disadvantaged catch up, do better for themselves. And finally, and this is more related to SDG 16, we can also show even that when you have more libraries around, people tend to be more interested in politics. People tend to be more engaged in civic and political life. Now, all of these data, as said, it's correlations, it's not causality. We can't on this basis say definitely more libraries mean there will be greater interest in politics, more libraries mean there will be greater equality. But what we can say is that there's an association, something's happening here. And this can be really powerful if you're going in and trying to advocate. The final thing I was going to show you on this is, again, we can show that library book loans per capita, when there are more loans, the amount that households are spending on books is higher. It's fared better over the last few years, even in the face of competition from Netflix and so on. We can see that more library book loans tends to be associated with better performance for publishing. It's a great argument if we have to discuss about whether libraries should be lending less or pay more to do so. So I'm going to stop there because we need to leave time for questions and answers. you can find, or we will share the PowerPoint later, and there will be links in it, so you can find links to each of these bits of analysis that hopefully you can use yourself in your own work. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand back to you, Randa.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much. There are a couple of, I think Kristine has answered most of the questions that were submitted in the Q&A chat box, but then there were other questions that were submitted in the regular chat box. I believe you will receive answers on that. Christina, would you like me to raise those questions at the moment that were received in the chat box?
Well, if you have listed them, summarized them somehow, then
okay.
I'll take them.
Right. There was a question that says, can data be submitted anytime, or is there a data entry schedule?
Yes, it's a good question, which I tried to answer. And is that, as I said, it's an ongoing activity, and we have an annual cycle, let's say. And there is no specific deadline for everybody, because what we have learned over years is that countries have different agendas and different timelines for when they have their national statistics available. That's why our policy is that we can update data at any time when the contributor submits to us. And the active contributors, basically, we keep a communication and we have notes, and we know that in which months, which countries might submit something to us.
So this leads to the second question, does this mean that the LMW is updated regularly? So when you receive the data, do you automatically upload it onto the site, or does it take time to upload it?
No, it's done on a weekly basis, basically. So usually we would done it once a week, but if there is a necessity to do it immediately, we can help with that as well.
Okay, there's a question here related to the SDG stories, and it's how can we ensure our SDG stories are included in the voluntary national review on the country's implementation of the UN SDG? So if that's for you or for Stephen, I think.
Maybe it's for Stephen.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer that. So first of all, I've put in the chat, there's a list of all the countries that are undertaking voluntary national reviews this year, and there's only just over 40 of them. So not every country is included this year. It works over time. So almost every country has. So first of all, take a look at that list. If you are on that list, you should try and find out who is coordinating, how is the process being followed, because often there will be a call for evidence, a call for suggestions, there will be a meeting or something like that. This will vary from country to country. You can also see in the chat, I've included links to the 2 briefings we've put together. There's an overall briefing about voluntary national reviews, and then there's a month-by-month guide suggesting each of the steps that you should try and follow in order to maximize your chances of getting in there. But just to say, we've analyzed the VNRs, the voluntary national reviews that have taken place so far. Roughly a quarter reference libraries at the moment, so there's good precedent here. Would love it to be higher than that. So if your country appears on that list and you haven't heard from us already, please do get in touch, and we'll be happy to work together to try and maximize your chances of getting included, because that also benefits libraries as a whole by providing better precedents and examples.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. Kristine, a question I think for you. The SDG stories, can they be written in Portuguese?
Yes, there was a similar question in the question and answer, but I'll answer it. So as I said, the working language is English, and it will be faster if we have information in English, because that's the majority of our team is the first language. Well, not the native language, but first. But the answer is you can submit information in any language. What would happen is that we would just use the machine translation tools to understand that. And now also with the new submission form, there is a place and possibility to add documents as additional information. These can also be reports in any language other than English. So we will make sure that we understand that. But what will happen is that after the submission of information, we will then work on the narrative in English, and we'll send back the narrative to you, and you might as well again use the machine translation tool to understand it better, to check our work and all the facts, but we'll find a way.
Okay. There's another question. What happens to the old data on the website if a contributor has data, for example, for 2018, but could not submit something for 2017? So it's this change of data. What happens to this older data?
So currently, the library map of the world, and it's been like that since the beginning. Decision was made that we display the most current and the most recent data the country has. So we do not save or keep the historic data on the website at the moment, but we have that in internal records. So if you missed 1 year, you don't have to think about 2017, you just submit 2018, which is the most current data in your case.
Okay. I think a question we got here is that could a video for an SDG story be provided by the contributor?
As a submission?
Yes.
Probably. Well, the thing is, as I said, we changed the approach from asking you to write a story to asking you to submit information about the story. If that video contains answers to all those 3 questions of what the program is about, why it was necessary, and what the impact is, then yes, answer is yes. You can submit a video containing answers to those stories. We would listen, transcribe, and narrate it for you. It is a possibility.
Stephen, this is a question for you. You presented information on different countries except for Russia. Do you have enough information about Russian libraries, or is there a gap there somewhere?
So we do have information about Russian libraries. I think especially Russia scores very highly, for example, on numbers of public libraries per 100,000 people and staff. If you look into the blog, if you look into the Library Stat of the Week blogs, where we actually do a lot of this analysis, there's more in there. What we can certainly do is highlight analysis. And I think, let me look, because one thing that we have been doing is creating, and this is more connected to our development and access to information project. We've been creating country profiles, drawing together that data in order to get an idea of how countries compare. So let me look to see if we have anything about Russia in there.
Okay, thank you very much.
We do. Yep.
Yep. Okay, thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
I think I've gone through the questions that were in the chat box. We do not have any more questions. I'd just like to thank all our speakers for being here with us and for sharing with us their experience. I would now like to move on and present to all of you the upcoming activities of the MLAS. On the 16th of March at 4 o'clock Central Timing, we're going to provide you with a forum to get to know more the IFLA president-elects, the candidates for the IFLA president-elect. So it would be very interesting to get to know our colleagues and to decide on who we're going to vote for. Then we have featured topics coming along. The schedule hasn't been finalized, but we will keep you up to date. And the topics are generally library associations in COVID-19 times. We have another topic, equity, diversity, and inclusion in library associations. It's a very important topic, especially nowadays with this diverse and inclusive community that we have. And then, of course, we have social media for library associations. How can we use the tools of social media for more visibility and greater effectiveness and visibility with our members, community, or others. And I believe that is our topic till now. That is the session for now. Thank you very much for all your participation. And I hope we will be able to see you at further sessions and go on with our work as an association. I would just like to go back to Halo, in case Halo would like to say the closing words as the coordinator of the MLAS session.
Thank you very much, Randa. It was a very good webinar in my point of view, and I want to thank all the responsible which made it possible, this first webinar: Stephen Wyber, Randa Shidiak, Kristine Paberza-Ramiresa, Lloyd Jun-Chin, and the background team from Standing Committee MLAS. And I hope you will with us next time, what Randa announced, the 16th of March, with the presentation of the candidates for IFLA President-elect. Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning or good night, everybody. Thank you, colleagues, for attending this first webinar from MLAS.